Alright, then this was a requested video, requested topic about my box here. Frankly, I don't really know what's so interesting about this computer because I actually think about getting myself a new one. Although for me most important is that the system runs, say, well enough. Good, that is. Yeah, okay, let's try. What could there be interesting about this machine? Okay, let's see. I've got myself a new keyboard, which is a true switch keyboard. It's Falco Maestro Touch keyboard, and it has a really, this is a really nice keyboard. It's a really nice keyboard, and it allows me to make things work quite nicely. Then I have a mouse, and recently I've got myself a new mouse pad. Okay, that lighting here is a little bad. This is my mouse and my mouse pad. This is a Logitech mouse. Usually I buy myself the stuff that is best, so to speak, because it's very important for me to have a nice keyboard and to have a nice mouse, because I can work on a machine with a crappy mouse or a crappy keyboard. The last keyboard I've got was an old IBM, although it was a rubber dome keyboard. I've got it for almost 10 years, so I've got myself a new one. I'm thinking about getting myself a new screen, because the screen, yeah, I've got a larger screen at work as it is, and this always lets me think, sort of like, oh, okay, it's probably time for an update. I have a nice Teufel sound box on here, and I have attached a lot of hardware to this system. I have a mobile VLAN, WLAN, I don't know what you call it, wireless LAN, I don't know. My relay card, I've still working on my new relay card, which is hopefully finished anytime soon. I've got myself a new printer, which I already lost a few words in my last video. It's a really good printer, and it's a scanner, so this is why I threw my old SCSI scanner away. Although I still have the SCSI card installed, I need to throw this out. But to throw the SCSI card out, I have to disassemble this whole thing. You know, the tower for this machine I've got just about, I don't even know how long ago, probably 10 years, something like that, at least. It's a really old crummy tower, and as you see, that goes back into the time, 10 years, that's what we are talking about, goes back into a time when I really started with electronics and tinkering around. The first thing I did was installing this IDE, this LED, which was a bright LED, and that's it. That was my first tweak here, and this was originally, and there's still a relay inside there to switch on the pump, and this was a 230 volts control lamp for my first water pump I had, which was still a 230 volt pump, which I have replaced. This pump is replaced. The display doesn't work anymore. It has a simple reason. There's still a parallel port controller on there. I planned to make myself a USB controller, but I had to update the software and all that kind of stuff, and it's something I just wasn't able to come around to yet. This is a DVD writer, which isn't even installed right now at the system. I don't know, I think I'm missing a power plug here. I've recently installed myself a Blu-ray rewriter here. The prices for these drives are so low in the meantime, and also, say every 1 or maybe 2 years max, I replace those drives, because they're not made to last for eternity anymore. What would you expect with this price? By now the system itself, oh man, a lot of dust in here. The system itself is installed on a solid state disk, which I have mounted on top of my my power supply. This gave me a good performance boost, especially with booting up. I mean, the BIOS and the old SCSI card bus scan takes more than getting the system up. Actually, I mean, fully getting it up. I have for a long time installed a water cooling solution here. Yeah, I need to replace this. You know, I don't know. That is something you see, I have tweaked around it because when I first installed it, I had silicone hoses in there, and now I have plastic hoses, and I had to sort of do a little converting trick. So make this is a temperature sensor to make this all work, and this is all tweaked and all. Yeah, that's why I think of getting myself a new computer. But getting myself a new computer is not just a matter of price, but it's also a matter of work you have to put into it to make it a good machine, a machine that runs the stuff I really want to run and all that. Yeah, nothing spectacular. This is a passively cooled graphics card. This is TTX. It's an older one. It's, you know, Nvidia didn't bring new cards for quite a while. They just relabeled their old stuff, and that's about it. You know what I mean. The whole thing is then attached here. This looks very. I mean, I have to organize these cables a little better. This is the 100 megabit network where my printer and the gateway and all that kind of stuff is attached to. Yeah, that's the most thing. I mean, okay, I'm running Linux. On this machine, I haven't installed any real physical Windows installation because, well, you know, I'm using Windows at work, and that bullshits me enough. I have a few virtual machines running with Linux, and I'm running OpenSUSE. That has a very simple reason. That is because SUSE was one of the first Linux distributions I used, and for a while there I worked there. You know, this is my old employee card, my old employee ID, and so that was the one distro I was actually working on myself. So for a part it has sentimental reasons, and I tried out Ubuntu, which is supposed to be the best Linux distribution, but you know, that thing, it's supposed to be shielding you from certain things, and like if I have a distribution that doesn't even allow me to configure a bootloader right, and it's something I grabbed from my machine and it didn't work. I tried it 2 times. I mean, I really tried it 2 times, and 2 times it didn't just work. And there was a time when that kind of stuff didn't really bother me, and I spent hours and hours and hours to just configure the thing. I mean, those times are over. I mean, sometimes I just appreciate things to work right, and yeah, I've got three hard disks in there with a total of about 1.8 terabytes or something. I'm thinking about expanding that, alright. Yeah, you know how it is with hard drives. Also, hard drives I tend to replace after 2 years, just because, you know, after 2 years of usage like that, I start mistrusting these drives. So that's what I usually, on a regular basis, replace. I replaced recently the main board of this computer because it made me problems, because I thought it was the main board that made me problems. I then figured out a while later that it wasn't really the main board, but the CPU was defective. So and because I wasn't really sure which part it was. Was it the main board? Was it the CPU? I knew it had to be one of them, so I replaced both. Although it's still just a 3 GHz XP, Athlon XP2 something processor. It's still nothing really fancy. And that's one of the problems. If I get myself a new machine, what do I want to buy? I mean, this new bulldozer architecture is, yeah, something I would call a nice try. And then you could always buy yourself an Intel system, which I never really liked to do. In the beginnings it was for monetary reasons, now it is more for, you know, these Intel systems, although they have a lot of power, like the graphics and all that sort of chipset stuff, the drivers, and are so bad. Think about what Intel did at the CES. That's something that lets me really think about. I cannot buy myself possibly an Intel system, and AMD doesn't really offer something actually interesting. I have to wait for the next CPU revision, for the next core revision, before I can buy anything from them again. So that usually makes me stuck with a system that's still fast enough, I suppose. Also, you know, sometimes it's not just how fast your computer is. We all know that development of computer processing power and all stagnated the past couple of years. I mean, it really did. And I mean, it's to get something to max out your performance of your system. It's usually mainly a software thing, a configuration thing today. So I mean, I think I can live with that. And I've got myself a new printer, because the old printer was so crummy and old, and I had this for 8 years or so. And it was a Windows GI printer. This is a true PostScript network printer here, and that's something that is really that makes me feel better about that system, and a new keyboard and all that stuff. That makes me feel good, and I need to feel comfortable when we're writing, when handling this machine. I need to feel comfortable, and I think it just must work right. I mean, that brings me to another topic about Linux. I mean, Linux was always, for a long time, it was the system of my choice. But then, you know, although it is, for a long time, it was a system of my choice. This is David, by the way. I mean, we're in contact with him once, but that's also a long time ago. That makes me, you know, I guess I'm just a bit nostalgic. That's what I always was, and I need to learn to live in the now and not so much in the past, and that's why I have to throw certain things away from time to time, just to ensure that. That brings me to another topic about Linux in general. It's not so stable anymore. I mean, it grew up and it's a very complex system, but with this complexity, at least on the desktop, comes a certain instability and certain buggy shit. I give you just one example. That's something that doesn't sit right with me for a guy who used. The first Linux I used was in, oh come on, let me think, 1998 or something like that. That was when I installed my first Linux distribution, which at that time was a DLD, Deutsche Linux Distribution. It wasn't even, it was a long time ago. Back then you had to know a lot about Linux to even be able to install it. I was always, at this time back then we had something that were called, at least we had this, I don't know whether you had this, the installation parties. Look at this. Look at the date, 29th of 30th, 2001, and then the first, second, third line, this one here. It says Linux install party. That's what we did in 2001. We held parties just, and people came and more experienced guys explained them how to install Linux. It was just about the installation. Yeah, that's something that is very pointless today, of course, because you have to click 2 times with your mouse and the thing is installed. It wasn't quite like that when I started out. Still, for example. This keyboard, unfortunately, it's a good keyboard, and this is something I can't buy in a local store, so I had to order it over the internet, and I ordered it with an English-US layout, and what have I got? I've gotten a German layout. Great stuff. Okay, and I said to myself, okay, yeah, I can use a German layout, why not? So I just had no sending it back, and it was all too complicated for me. You know, I've gotten really lazy, and then I changed the layout to German, and now I even removed the US layout from second place. And now every time I log into X, it's set on USA again. You know, always have to manually reset it. And that's crap. I mean, okay, that's a bug. This is a bug I just, a couple of years ago, would never have happened in Linux. And also, this is 3D accelerated graphics. Okay, that's nice and neat, but the first time this whole thing came up in a distribution, especially in SUSE, was 10.0. In 10.0, that was 5 or 6 years ago. You would have imagined that by that time they could get it stable enough to work, but you don't really have to do much. It's even enough to go into suspend and boot up again, and the graphics is trashed, and there's more bugs, like I open myself, say for example the mail client, probably works now because I want to demonstrate this, and then sometimes the graphics is trashed. Yeah, you can see it here. Look at this. Those are graphic errors. And then let's try to change the window. Okay, that doesn't even work. Sometimes these control buttons here don't even work, and okay, now it's alright, but sometimes this thing, you can't do a thing with it. Those are bugs, nasty bugs, and I would just Linux was better at times. And also about what I really don't like about Linux, I mean the modern Linux versions anyway. What I don't like about it is yeah, the way they go with the desktops, like KDE4 or something like that. I never really used KDE, but KDE4, that was, what a crap. And now they're doing the same thing with GNOME 3. I mean, Linus Torvalds was always this GNOME fan, and even he ranted about it because it was so shitty. Man, why is that? I mean, some of the things, let's start with, like in KDE, you couldn't even, you just say you wanted to change the fucking icon of the shortcut, and you had to start figuring this out. You say properties, and usually what you do is say, okay, let's change this icon here, and it works. But in KDE4, it wasn't even possible to change the fucking icon. I had try to figure out how to change the icon of a shortcut, and this is, for me, this is a no-go. I mean, sorry. If I sit in front of this computer and think, what the fuck? Not even the basic stuff is working out alright. I mean, then sorry, that's not Linux to me. Linux was always something a little more substantial, you know. I mean, at least that was what I thought. And then if we are on the topic of Linux, let's go on. Okay, that's 70 minutes, alright. I mean, it always takes me half an eternity to get these videos converted and up. One more thing, this is a Linux kernel book, a German one that is, and I have a second one about device drivers. I don't know whether I don't even know whether I even have that anymore. Yeah, it's also German, that's old, and this is kernel 2.2 or something like that. And you know, the Linux kernel API that just is not stable enough. It's not, for me, it's not really worth digging into it, because it's just, that's why I like to do things in user space, just because the Linux kernel architecture and API is not stable enough for me. Although it's an open system and it's very powerful, and it's certainly the system I have most experience with, that's why I still like to use it. It's not the same as it was, say, 10 years ago, or maybe even 5, 6, 7. It's not the same. It's gotten more mainstream, you know what I mean? And it's gotten mainstream in a way that just does not. And there's a few projects like Window Maker that are just no longer developed and everything. And it's not so nice. Although, I don't really want to bash the people who use their valuable spare time to work on a system like Linux, when many people are paid to work on it, but still, it's incredible piece of work, and I still appreciate that. But it's not what it was, say. So, I mean, I had this Linux system #1 poster here. This is also from the time when I started out with Linux, but the love I once had for the system is a little bit more relative now, because maybe it's just state of development that you come to this, but Linux isn't what it was anymore. And if I use SUSE, or if I look at the more modern distribution, I mean the distributions that are very common and appreciated, like Ubuntu, for example, to me that's a really crappy distribution. I mean, I wanted to look for a way to get away from SUSE, but point is, not with Ubuntu. Sorry, that's no way. I mean, that's so much worse. At least with this system, I know where the screws are. Yeah, and we have the software distribution problem on the Linux. I mean, because of the problematic, the API and even the library versions are just different on every machine. It's very hard to make a binary distribution that is dynamically linked. I mean, that's the way you distribute software in Windows, and that's something that is very hard in Linux. I mean, that's because of the nature of that system. This is why I usually deliver everything in source. I mean, that's nice, of course, if you do open source, but it's bad if you do it on a commercial basis. I mean, you can't just deliver all the source, and then on a commercial product or something like that, a normal user would never be able to even compile the project. I mean, I have a very small and handy project with a couple of source files, but if I think, even if they would do it, it would be impossible. I mean, it would probably take me days to figure out and finally be able to compile certain projects on my system by hand, and this is something that just cannot just be. I mean, while Linux grew up, it still has some problems that are just because of its nature. But then I can't really say that Windows is much better in any way. Yeah, I could go on like this, but whatever. Okay, sweetheart, I hope that helped you a little on figuring out my Linux box and ever. I mean, I was a time when I really liked talking about Linux and that stuff, but this is very peripheral to me now. I just usually I have more specific topics and all those. I mean, it's not so that I sometimes I'm getting a little esoterical here and a little philosophical too, but I don't think it's really viable to do this with the operating system. Yeah, thanks for watching, and see you soon. One more thing. I was going nuts searching for my tripod. Either I misplaced it, which is not so likely, or somebody ripped it from me. All the stuff I got to steal my tripod, I mean, that's something. I mean, I may understand a few things, but that I don't understand. So it's getting a little bit harder for some of the videos I wanted to do, but I think I can somehow manage. Yeah, thanks for watching, and see you soon. At least we have got a nice picture here, haven't we?